I'm just a boy, fair and stranger, traveling through a world of woe. Ain't no sickness, toil, nor danger in that bright land to which I go.
I'm curious about the epiphany in terms of what drew you to when this story became real in your mind, and what it is you wanted to say when you sat down to write this story.
It's really, at this point, I'd have to say that it's as if it were something that always existed. Mm-hmm. Making a play is such a difficult thing.
Yeah.
It's something that almost doesn't want to exist, and that really they must be forced into existence.
Yeah.
And it's no different, really, no matter the scale. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah. When you're writing plays, one of the things that's always those catchphrases is the idea, the unlikely friendship. But at some point,
somebody's got to get that out of every press release. Absolutely.
Exactly. But here, at some point, it came into your head, I want to put together an old man who survived the Holocaust with a Palestinian thing, and I'm curious about what it was why you thought that would work as a play.
Well, it's a really controversial thing, but they were somewhat equated in my mind. Mm-hmm. And it actually a lot of why it's controversial made it into the play, because it's not a very good analogy, and it's not a very direct analogy, but there is something to it, right? When the oppressed find themselves being oppressors, they find themselves in an extremely difficult situation, and obviously as do the oppressed.
Yeah.
But the argument is certainly out there, and it can't be ignored.
Right.
But it can, I think it's a decent dialogue to have.
Would you talk a little bit about how much thought you gave to politics as opposed to story when you were writing this?
I was really concerned with the balance issue, and I really wanted to make, I didn't want to be unfair to anybody, and then finally, I didn't care. I'm not a peace negotiator, and it's theater. I wish that we had a greater effect in the world, but we truly don't. And so, it was important to just make the best work I could.
I had the same feeling. I didn't want it to make it about politics, and I kept seeing that as the big trap.
I grew up in a small town that had a theater they were really passionate about and really cared about, and things weren't perfect.
Yeah.
Really, they're built to touch an audience, and it did. It reaches these people.
And for those who don't know, Wadi has never acted before. No. Except for this. And so. But he's a trial lawyer, so that means he's on stage all the time. But he's...
Juries don't give you standing ovations, right, Mike? We hope for a little smile, but that's all we do.
Except in the movies. I just love this story. We were in rehearsal, and he was trying to get off book, and he's going through his lines, and he messes up his line, and he says, "Strike that."
Actually, it was withdrawn, but...
Withdrawn. That was it. Yeah. It was so funny. It was an incredible moment.
I may be typecast. So, unless I want to be tortured by Jack Bauer, I may not be able to act.
It's good money being tortured.
But
by
along
Jack
those
Bauer.
lines, I should share this. Len shot me an email and he said, "I'd like to buy you lunch." Not because he wasn't thinking of casting me in the role. He just wanted me to consult on the script. As you heard, there was some Arabic stuff and there was some cultural stuff, little subtle stuff. You guys probably saw it. So we're having lunch, and this crazy guy looks at me and he has this total right brain actor moment. He's like, "Why don't you audition for this play?" I'm like, "Fine, I will. I'm a hand."
That's the part that, I'll do anything.
What I was thinking was, I'll audition and it'll be fun and I'll get cut and I'll say, "Hey, I auditioned for a play." It's a great story. You did. And so, but one concern I had was, look, in my personal life, I'm actually a Palestinian American, and I've struggled for years especially post 9/11, struggling against stereotypes of Middle Easterners, and we're the latest bad guy in American history, if you will. So I was concerned, and I looked at Len and I said, am I going to blow something up? Then he paused and he said, I won't answer that. Just read the script. So I read the script cover to cover, and what Eliam's done here is he's taken a very hot potato issue, and he's made it such a personal thing and extremely complex and multi-layered and all of that. And he actually made a Palestinian that may have done something that you don't like in the end, but he was a human and he was complex. You saw all facets of his personality, and I respected that a lot. The more we read the play, I think Rich and I were walking around Sloan Lake by where he lives doing lines like 2 weeks ago. And we're on like towards the end, and we just paused and we're like, whoa, we never saw that in that line.
The line was about one of those children could have grown up to be the one to give you your land back. Now here's a Jew saying it's your land and you should get it back. And in that dialogue, that little epiphany of brightness, I mean, just everywhere we turned, there were things like that in that script.
Palestinians in the audience would like to know why you picked a Hispanic to play the Palestinian.
He picked a Hispanic to play a Jew.
And he picked a Jew to play a Palestinian terrorist.
I have a question of the playwright, and the question I have is the title. Tell us about the title, where you got the title.
Always had it.
Always had it.
Yeah, I always had it. I don't know, really. It had been in the play in a number of different places, actually, before it found its way to the very last line. And there were incarnations of the play where it wasn't in the play at all, and it was odd to people, and I used to get guesses as to why. But you don't rename your kids when they're 12.
What was the reaction in New York? I know that when My Name is Rachel Corrie went to New York, that there was such a tremendous outcry from the Jewish community that the play got postponed. And
yeah, man. Why? Where were they for me?
Well, there's my question: is that this whole notion, the most incendiary aspect, is the oppressed becomes the oppressor, and I can only imagine in New York that would have been incredibly controversial.
It should have been. Man, they didn't have it together on that publicity front, man. It absolutely should have been.
Like, you didn't piss off the right people.
Totally. No, I tried to get my mother to protest out front. She wouldn't do it.
Well, you mentioned that your dad is Israeli. What was his reaction to first seeing this play?
He loved this play.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a play written for him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about him exactly. But it's not exactly not about him. And he loved this play, and he loved it in every. He saw more productions of 16 Wounded than I did.
Really?
I mean, he passed away a couple years ago.
Sorry.
But before that, I mean, he went to readings in far off places in the valley.
Yeah.
Like,
what do you think spoke most to him? I'm sure he talked to you about it.
It's a fairly broad play. Like, it's not really dealing in subtleties.
Yeah.
You have a Holocaust survivor. You have somebody who's a terrorist, right? Like, has been and will be again. Mm-hmm. It's not a play dealing in subtleties, and that appealed to him. I think he sort of appreciated that.
But what strikes me is I wanted to come because I keep trying to understand this conflict, and I can't, for the life of me, understand the senselessness of this conflict, especially because I don't understand what we're doing. I don't understand us either.
I know dark clouds gonna gather around me. I know my way'll be rough and steep. Yet beautiful fields lie just before me, where God's redeemed.